The building was going to kill people. Adrian Cole knew it the moment he saw the blueprint spread across his kitchen table, brought by a half-frozen stranger who'd tracked him down in the middle of nowhere. 3 years ago, he'd walked away from a billion-dollar empire after his design flaw collapsed an entire parking structure. Now, staring at these documents while a blizzard screamed outside, he recognized the same fatal mistake. The construction deadline was 48 hours away. The storm had them trapped, and somewhere in the city below, a tower was about to become a tomb. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The wind didn't howl up here. It shrieked. Adrian Cole stood at the cabin window, watching the pines bend like they were trying to snap themselves in half. Snow came down so thick he couldn't see past the tree line anymore. Not that there was much to see, just more mountain, more isolation, more of the nothing he'd chosen when he walked away from everything else. "Daddy, the lights are flickering again." He turned from the window. Emma sat cross-legged on the worn couch, her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, colored pencils scattered around her like casualties. She was 7 years old, and she'd already learned not to be afraid of storms because her father had taught her that some things you just had to wait out. "It's just the wind, sweetheart. The generator will kick in if we need it." "Are we going to lose power like last time?" "Maybe, but we've got flashlights and that lantern your grandma sent." Emma wrinkled her nose. "The one that smells weird?" "That's the one." She went back to her drawing, some elaborate scene involving horses and castles that would have made his ex-wife smile. Claire always said Emma had his focus, his ability to lose herself in the details. Before she'd decided she couldn't handle being married to a man who'd stopped believing in himself. The divorce papers had arrived 6 months after the collapse. He'd signed them in a hotel room in Denver, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. That was 2 years ago. Adrian moved to the kitchen, opening the propane stove to put water on for coffee. The cabin was small, 800 square feet of rough timber and practical design. No cell signal, no internet. The satellite phone was for emergencies only, and he used it maybe once a month to let his attorney know he was still breathing. This was what his life had become. Playing house in the mountains with his daughter every other week, the rest of the time spent in a rented apartment in Boulder, where he taught intro to structural engineering at the community college. The students called him Professor Cole. None of them knew he used to design buildings that redefined skylines. Used to. The kettle started to whistle. He poured the water over yesterday's grounds. He'd forgotten to bring fresh coffee on this trip, another small failure in a long series, and carried the mug to his desk in the corner. Paperwork from the college sat in a manila folder. Midterms to grade. A department meeting he'd have to attend next week about curriculum updates that wouldn't matter to anyone. This was fine. This was safe. Outside, the storm got meaner. The knock came at 9:47 p.m. 3 sharp raps that cut through the wind noise like gunshots. Emma's head snapped up from her drawing. "Someone's here?" Adrian set down his mug, frowning. No one came up here. The access road was 4 miles of switchbacks that turned into a death trap in weather like this. He'd put the cabin under an LLC, kept the ownership buried. Even his ex-wife didn't know exactly where it was. The knock came again, harder this time. He crossed to the door, Emma sliding off the couch to follow him. "Stay back, Em." "But who?" "Just stay back." He flipped the deadbolt and pulled the door open. The woman on his porch was dying. That was his first thought. She stood in a full blizzard, no hat, her coat so thin it might as well have been tissue paper. Her lips had gone past blue into something darker. She was shaking so hard her teeth clicked together when she tried to speak. "Adrian Cole?" Her voice barely made it over the wind. I found you, please." She had a leather messenger bag clutched against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Jesus Christ!" Adrian grabbed her arm and pulled her inside. She stumbled over the threshold, and he had to catch her to keep her from going down. "Emma, get blankets, the wool ones from the bedroom." His daughter ran. The woman couldn't stand on her own. Adrian half carried her to the couch, her whole body trembling against him. Ice had formed in her dark hair, melting now in the cabin's warmth, running down her face in streams. "How did you—" He shook his head. "Never mind. We need to get you warm. Can you tell me your name?" Mara." Her jaw wouldn't stop chattering. Mara Ellis. Emma came back dragging two heavy blankets. Adrian wrapped them around the woman, Mara, tucking them in tight. Her fingers were white, the nails edged with purple. Frostbite, probably. He'd seen it before, back when he used to ski, before he gave up anything that felt like living. When's the last time you ate something? I don't. Yesterday? I drove up from Denver. The road, it got bad and I had to leave the car. I walked. You walked 4 miles in this? She nodded, still shaking. Had to. No signal to call, and I couldn't. There wasn't time to wait. Adrian moved to the kitchen, putting the kettle back on. He found a can of soup in the cabinet, dumped it in a pot. His mind was racing through protocols, hypothermia stages, warming techniques. Don't warm too fast or you could trigger cardiac arrest. He'd taken wilderness first aid years ago for a project site in Alaska. Daddy, her hands look really bad. I know, baby. She's going to be okay. He hoped that wasn't a lie. Mara, I'm making you something hot to drink and some food. Don't try to stand up yet. The bag. She fumbled with the messenger bag, her frozen fingers barely working. You have to see. That can wait. No. She looked at him, and despite the hypothermia, despite the shaking and the blue lips, her eyes were clear, desperate. It can't wait. That's why I came. Adrian Cole. You're Adrian Cole, the engineer, the one who designed the Helix Tower in Singapore, the Meridian Complex in Toronto. His stomach went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather outside. That's not me anymore. But it was. I found articles, awards. I tracked down people who worked with you. They said you were the best, that you could see problems no one else could see, that you... They were wrong. He turned back to the stove, watching the soup start to bubble. I'm a community college instructor now. Whatever you think I can do for you, I can't. People are going to die. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emma had gone quiet in the corner, watching both of them with wide eyes. Adrian wanted to tell her to go to her room, but she'd just argue, and honestly, he didn't have the energy. He poured soup into a bowl, brought it over with a mug of weak coffee. Mara's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the mug. Let me help. He guided it to her lips, tipping it slowly. She drank, grimacing at the taste but getting it down. Some color started creeping back into her face. After a few minutes of silence, just the wind and the crackling from the wood stove, she set down the mug. There's a building in Denver, she said quietly. The Titan Center. Mixed use, residential, and commercial. 42 stories. They broke ground 8 months ago. The foundation work is almost done. Adrian said nothing. I'm an accountant. I work for Redfield Development. They're the ones building it. Last week I was doing expense reconciliation and I found something wrong. Payments to a concrete subcontractor that didn't match the engineering specs. I started digging, pulling invoices, cross-referencing materials orders. She pulled the messenger bag onto her lap, wincing as her frozen fingers worked the clasp. The concrete mix they're using isn't what's in the approved plans. It's cheaper, weaker. And the rebar spacing in the foundation. Someone changed it. Cut costs. The numbers didn't make sense, so I found the original structural drawings and compared them to what's actually being built. She pulled out a thick folder of documents, her hands still trembling. It's wrong. All of it. The load calculations don't work anymore. But I'm an accountant, not an engineer. I couldn't prove it, so I started looking for someone who could. She looked at him. You disappeared 3 years ago, after the Hartwell Pavilion collapsed. There it was, the thing he never talked about, the thing that ended everything. 6 people died, Adrian said flatly. The parking structure failed during a wedding. I designed it. I approved the plans. I missed a critical flaw in the post-tension system. I read the investigation report, Mara said. It said the contractor deviated from your specs, that I should have caught it during inspection. I didn't. That's on me. He stood up, moving away from the couch. I don't do this anymore. I can't help you. They're pouring the core columns in 48 hours. Once that concrete sets, the building's committed. There's no going back. Her voice cracked. I went to the project manager. I went to my bosses. They said I was wrong, that I didn't understand construction, that I should stick to counting money. I went to the city inspector. He's on Redfield's payroll, I'm sure of it. No one will listen. So you track down a washed-up engineer hiding in the mountains. I tracked down the only person I could find who might actually give a damn if people die. The wind hammered the cabin. One of the shutters had come loose somewhere, banging rhythmically against the siding. Emma spoke up from her corner. Daddy, if people are going to get hurt, Emma, this isn't... He stopped, took a breath. Sweetheart, why don't you get ready for bed? Brush your teeth. But please. She looked at Mara, then back at him, and something in his daughter's face made his chest tight. Disappointment, maybe. Or just sadness that her father was choosing to be small when someone needed him to be big. She went to the bathroom without another word. Mara was watching him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought this to your home, shouldn't have put this on you, I just didn't know where else to go. Adrian walked to the window. The storm had somehow gotten worse. Snow piled against the glass. Tomorrow they'd be snowed in completely. Even his truck wouldn't make it down the mountain until this passed. How did you find me? Property records. I traced your LLC through 3 shell companies. Called in a favor from a friend who works in county filing. It took me 2 weeks. She paused. I know what it's like to run away from something. I'm not judging you for that. Aren't you? No. I'm asking you to stop running, just for long enough to look at these documents and tell me if I'm crazy or if there's really something wrong. He didn't turn around. And if there is? What then? You said it yourself. No one's listening. We're stuck on a mountain in the middle of a blizzard, and even if we could get to Denver, it's your word against a major developer with millions on the line. Then at least I'll know I tried everything. And so will you. The shutter kept banging. You can stay here tonight, Adrian said finally. Storm like this, you'd die if you tried to leave. Tomorrow, when it clears, I'll help you get back to your car. But I'm not looking at those documents. He heard her exhale behind him. Disappointment, resignation, maybe anger. He couldn't tell and didn't want to. Thank you for the shelter. Her voice was small. I'm sorry I bothered you. The bedroom down the hall is the guest room. There's extra blankets in the closet. You should sleep. She didn't move for a long moment. Then he heard her stand, the floorboards creaking under her weight. For what it's worth, she said quietly, the people who knew you, the ones I talked to, they all said the same thing. That you cared more about safety than anyone they'd ever met. That you'd spend days checking and rechecking calculations because you never wanted to be the reason someone got hurt. She paused. I guess they didn't know you as well as they thought. She walked down the hall. A door closed. Adrian stood at the window until his breath fogged the glass. Emma came out of the bathroom in her pajamas. She didn't say anything, just climbed onto the couch and pulled a blanket over herself. Usually she'd ask for a story. Tonight she just curled up and closed her eyes. He knew she wasn't asleep. She was doing that thing kids do when they're disappointed in their parents but don't have the words to explain why. He sat down at his desk. The manila folder with the midterms mocked him. He pushed it aside and put his head in his hands. 3 years ago, he'd stood in a hospital waiting room while they pulled survivors from the Hartwell Pavilion rubble. He'd watched the death count tick upward on the news. He'd answered questions from investigators who were polite but persistent. And when the final report came out, contractor error, yes, but the engineer should have caught it during inspection. He'd known his career was over. Not because of lawsuits, those settled. Not because he couldn't find work. Firms still called for the first 6 months, telling him everyone makes mistakes. It was the contractor's fault. Come back. It was over because every time he looked at a blueprint, all he saw was the moment of failure, the sound of concrete cracking, the screaming. He'd tried therapy, tried medication. Claire had tried to help. God knows she'd tried, but you can't love someone out of their guilt. Eventually, she'd taken Emma and left, and he couldn't even blame her. The teaching job was supposed to be temporary, just until he figured out what came next. That was 18 months ago. The wind shook the whole cabin. Something crashed outside, a branch probably. The lights flickered but held. Adrian looked at the closed door of the guest room. He thought about Mara walking 4 miles through a blizzard, risking her life because she thought people were in danger and no one would listen. He thought about Emma's face when she realized her father was choosing fear over helping someone. He thought about the 6 people who died because he missed something he should have caught. Then he stood up, crossed to where Mara had left the messenger bag on the floor by the couch, and picked it up. The folder was thick, stuffed with documents. He spread them out on his desk, turning on the lamp. Invoices. Purchase orders. Email printouts. And beneath all of that, architectural plans marked with a Redfield Development logo. He pulled out the structural drawings first. Foundation layout, load distribution charts, concrete specifications, rebar schedules. His hands moved automatically, spreading the pages out, organizing them by system. It had been 3 years since he'd done this. 3 years since he'd let himself think like an engineer instead of someone who used to be one. The numbers started talking to him. It took him 20 minutes to see the first problem. The concrete mix specification called for 6,000 pounds per square inch, with specific admixtures for cold weather curing and early strength development. But the invoices Mara had pulled showed orders for 4,500 pounds per square inch standard mix. That was a 25% reduction in compressive strength. He grabbed a calculator, started running numbers. The rebar spacing was next. The plans called for number 8 bars at 12 inches on center in the foundation mat. But according to Mara's notes, she'd apparently gotten photos from someone on site. They'd spaced them at 18 inches. His stomach started to sink. He pulled up the load calculations, checked them against building codes, ran them again because the first answer couldn't be right. It was. An hour passed. Then 2. He covered the desk in notes, calculations scrawled in margins, checks, and rechecks of the structural analysis. The storm had quieted down outside, or maybe he just stopped hearing it. Emma had fallen asleep for real now, her breathing deep and steady. Adrian sat back in his chair, staring at the papers. The building was going to fail. Not immediately, maybe not for years, but the foundation couldn't support the load it was designed to carry. The reduced concrete strength combined with the improper rebar spacing meant the mat foundation would crack under sustained stress. And once it cracked, once the integrity was compromised, it was only a matter of time. A year, maybe 5, maybe 10. But eventually, during peak occupancy, during a high wind event, during an earthquake, something would trigger the cascade, and the Titan Center would come down. He looked at his calculations again, hoping he'd made a mistake. Ran the numbers a third time. The math didn't lie. 42 stories. Mixed use. Residential units on the upper floors, retail on the ground level, offices in between, thousands of people. His hands were shaking. The guest room door opened. Mara stood in the hallway, wrapped in one of the blankets. Her hair was still damp, face pale, but the dangerous edge of hypothermia had passed. "I heard you moving around." She looked at the desk, at all the papers. "You looked." "I shouldn't have." "But you did." He met her eyes. "It's worse than you thought. The foundation won't support the designed load, not with the materials they're actually using. I'd need to see the full engineering analysis, the geotechnical reports, but based on what's here..." He stopped. "This building shouldn't be built. Not like this." Mara came into the room, the blanket trailing behind her. "Can we stop it?" "I don't know, maybe. If we can get to the city, if we can present this to someone who'll listen..." "They won't. I told you I already tried. You're an accountant. No offense, but they can dismiss you. They can't dismiss a structural engineer showing them the math." "They dismissed you 3 years ago." The words landed like a slap. "That's different," he said. "Is it? You think that they're going to listen to the guy who walked away from his career after a building collapsed? The guy who's been hiding in the mountains teaching intro classes?" She wasn't being cruel, just honest. "They'll bury you. They'll say you're bitter, washed up, desperate for attention. Redfield Development has lawyers who eat people like us for breakfast." Adrian looked at Emma, still asleep on the couch. "So what do you want me to do?" "I don't know," Mara said quietly. "I came here because I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe someone who understood the stakes would know what to do, that maybe you'd have connections or resources, or just..." She trailed off. "I'm sorry. This was stupid. I should have just accepted that sometimes bad things happen, and there's nothing you can do." "No." She looked at him. "You did the right thing." Adrian stood up, gathering the papers. "Someone has to see this, someone with authority. We need to find a city official who isn't on Redfield's payroll, a media outlet willing to run the story, something. The storm will clear by morning. We'll get down the mountain, get to Denver. We've got 48 hours before they pour the core columns. If we can stop the pour, even delay it, that buys time for a proper investigation. They'll sue me. I pulled internal documents. This is probably theft or corporate espionage, or let them sue. You'll be alive to deal with it. Mara pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Why are you doing this? 2 hours ago, you said you couldn't help. Adrian looked at his daughter. Because she's watching, he said quietly, and I don't want her to grow up thinking her father was someone who knew people were in danger and did nothing. That's a good reason. It's the only one I've got. They stood there in the lamplight, the storm finally dying outside, the weight of what they were about to try settling over both of them. You should get some sleep, Adrian said. We'll leave at first light. It's going to be a hell of a drive down the mountain. Mara nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. Thank you, she said, for looking, for caring, for not being what you thought you were. I'm not doing this because I'm brave. I'm doing it because I'm terrified of being the person who walks away twice. Sometimes that's the same thing. She went back to the guest room. The door clicked shut. Adrian sat at his desk, looking at the calculations, the proof of the danger sitting right there in black and white. He thought about the 6 people who died in the Hartwell Pavilion, thought about the wedding that turned into a disaster, thought about the moment he understood that his mistake had killed people, and now here was a chance to stop it from happening again. Except this time, he wasn't the one who'd made the mistake. This time, someone else's greed and corner-cutting was going to cause the disaster. This time, he could actually do something about it, if he was brave enough. If he hadn't broken himself so badly that he couldn't function, if he could be the engineer he used to be, just for long enough to matter. Emma stirred on the couch, mumbling something in her sleep. He went over, adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead. She didn't wake. Outside, the last of the storm blew itself out. By dawn, the sky would clear. The road would still be dangerous, probably impassable in places. But his truck had chains, and he knew how to drive in snow. They'd make it down. And then what? He'd figure it out. He had to. Because Mara was right about one thing. The people who knew him, the ones who'd worked with him before everything fell apart, they'd said he cared about safety more than anyone. Maybe they had known him after all. Maybe somewhere under all the fear and guilt and self-loathing, that person still existed. Maybe it was time to find out. Adrian turned off the lamp and lay down on the floor next to the couch, using a throw pillow for his head. The cabin settled around him, wood creaking as the temperature dropped. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing he wouldn't, knowing the calculations would keep running through his head until morning. 48 hours. Thousands of people. And a washed-up engineer's last chance to prove he was more than his worst mistake. The sky at dawn looked like something had beaten it half to death. Adrian stood on the porch, boots crunching through 8 inches of fresh snow, watching bruised clouds drag themselves east. The storm had passed, but left the mountain looking like a war zone. Trees down everywhere. His truck buried under a drift that would take 20 minutes to dig out. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Mara stepped out, wearing the same thin coat from last night. She looked better, color back in her face, steadier on her feet, but still half frozen. That's all you brought? That coat? She shrugged. I left Denver in a hurry. Wasn't exactly planning for Arctic conditions. You're going to freeze before we make it halfway down. He went back inside, dug through the closet until he found Claire's old parka. His ex-wife had left it behind, along with a lot of other things she didn't want anymore. Here. It'll be big on you, but it's warm. Mara took it, something unreadable crossing her face. Thanks. Emma was at the kitchen table eating cereal and watching them both with the kind of attention kids have when adults are pretending everything's normal, but clearly isn't. We're going on a trip, sweetheart, Adrian said, down to Denver, just for the day. Because of the building? Yeah, because of the building. Is it going to fall down like the other one? The words hit him square in the chest. He'd never talked to Emma about Hartwell. Never explained what happened, why they'd moved, why Mommy left. She was only 4 when it happened. He'd thought she didn't remember. Kids remember everything. I'm going to make sure it doesn't, he said quietly. That's why we have to go. Emma nodded, like this made perfect sense. Like her father trying to stop a disaster was just a normal Tuesday. She finished her cereal, took the bowl to the sink, and went to pack her backpack without being asked. Mara was watching him. You didn't tell her. She was 4. What was I supposed to say? The truth, maybe. The truth is that 6 people died because I missed something. You want me to explain that to a 4-year-old? She's 7 now, and she's going to find out eventually. Kids always do. Adrian grabbed the truck keys from the hook by the door. You have kids? No. Then maybe don't tell me how to raise mine. It came out harsher than he meant. Mara's face closed off, professional and distant again. Sorry, he said. I didn't. It's fine. Let's just focus on getting down the mountain. It took 40 minutes to dig the truck out and get the chains on. By the time they finished, Adrian's back was screaming and his hands were numb even through the gloves. Emma sat in the back seat with her backpack and a ratty stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. Mara climbed into the passenger seat, the messenger bag on her lap like it might escape if she wasn't holding it. Adrian started the engine, let it warm up while he scraped ice off the windshield. You know this road? Mara asked. I've driven it 100 times. In conditions like this? Twice, maybe 3 times. He got back in, put the truck in gear. Hold on to something. The access road was worse than he'd expected. Snow had drifted across whole sections, turning the switchbacks into guesswork. Twice they had to stop while he got out and used the shovel to clear a path. The truck slipped and slid, chains grinding against ice, engine whining in low gear. Emma didn't complain. She just watched out the window, humming something to herself. Mara gripped the door handle so hard her knuckles went white. You okay? Adrian asked. I don't like mountain roads. Little late for that. I know. They came around a tight corner and Adrian hit the brakes, the truck fishtailing before the chains caught. A pine had come down across the road, blocking everything. Hell! He got out, assessed the situation. The tree was too big to move, too thick to cut through with the handsaw in his emergency kit, and the shoulder on the right side dropped off into nothing. Mara joined him, Emma staying in the truck. Can we get around it? Mara asked. Not in the truck. Road's too narrow. So we're stuck. Adrian looked at the tree, then at the drop-off, then back the way they'd come. His brain was already working the problem, running calculations about weight distribution and traction. We can winch it, he said. Pull it far enough to the side that we can squeeze past. But I'm going to need your help. It took an hour. The winch on his truck was old, cranky, and absolutely not designed for pulling full-grown pines. But between the two of them, Mara guiding the cable, Adrian working the controls, they managed to drag the tree far enough over that the truck could fit. Barely. He had Emma close her eyes while he navigated past, one set of wheels hanging so far over the edge he could feel the truck wanting to tip. But the chains held, the frame didn't scrape, and they made it through. Mara had gone pale again. You do that a lot? First time. Great. They kept going. The road got better as they lost elevation, the snow thinning out until it was just slush and ice. By the time they hit the county highway, Adrian's shoulders were locked up from tension, and he had a headache building behind his eyes. Mara checked her phone. I've got signal. Barely. Call someone. Anyone who might listen. She scrolled through her contacts, tried 3 numbers. All of them went to voicemail. She left messages, clipped, professional, urgent. But Adrian could hear the defeat creeping into her voice. They're not going to call back, she said finally. Then we find someone in person, the city building department, a news station, someone. Redfield has connections everywhere, I told you that. So we find someone they don't own. Emma spoke up from the back seat. What if you show them the math? Adrian glanced in the rear-view mirror. What? You're always saying math doesn't lie. Show them your numbers. Mara looked back at her. That's actually not a bad idea. The numbers only matter if someone understands them, Adrian said. Most city officials aren't engineers. Then we find an engineer, Mara said. Someone with credibility. Someone who can back up your analysis. Adrian's hands tightened on the wheel. The names ran through his head. Colleagues from before, people he'd worked with, people who'd called offering support after Hartwell. But that was 3 years ago. He'd stopped returning those calls, stopped answering emails. Eventually, they'd stop trying. I burned those bridges, he said quietly. All of them? He thought about it. There was one name. One person who'd kept reaching out even after Adrian made it clear he wanted to be left alone. Marcus Chen. They'd worked together on 4 major projects before Hartwell. Marcus had testified at the investigation, defending Adrian's design, blaming the contractor. He'd offered Adrian a job afterward, a fresh start at his firm in Seattle. Adrian had never responded. There's someone, Casses, he said. Maybe. I don't know if he'd even talk to me. It's worth trying. They stopped at a gas station on the edge of Boulder. Adrian filled the tank while Mara took Emma inside for snacks and a bathroom break. He stood in the cold, watching numbers tick upward on the pump, trying to figure out what he'd even say. "Hey Marcus, remember me? The guy who ghosted you for 3 years? I need a favor." His phone was in the truck. He'd left it there on purpose. One more way to disconnect from everything. But now he dug it out of the glove box, powered it on for the first time in 2 weeks. 17 voicemails. Mostly junk. 1 from his attorney about paperwork. 2 from Claire about Emma's schedule. Nothing from Marcus. Because why would there be? He'd given up a long time ago. Adrian pulled up the old contact, stared at the number. His thumb hovered over the call button. Inside the gas station, he could see Emma and Mara at the counter. His daughter was showing Mara something on a candy wrapper, both of them smiling. He made the call. It rang 4 times. Adrian was about to hang up when someone answered. "This is Chen." The voice was the same, precise, slightly formal, the accent barely there. Adrian's throat went tight. "Marcus, it's Adrian Cole." Silence on the other end. Long enough that Adrian thought maybe the connection had dropped. Then, "Adrian, I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I know, I'm sorry. I should have called back. Should have said thank you for... It's fine. You went through something. People handle trauma differently." A pause. "Are you okay?" "No, not really. I need help." Another pause. "What kind of help?" Adrian laid it out. The building in Denver. Mara's discovery. The calculations he'd run last night. The timeline they were up against. Marcus listened without interrupting. When Adrian finished, he heard papers rustling on the other end. "You're sure about the numbers?" "I've checked them 3 times. The foundation won't support the load." "And you think Redfield altered the plans to cut costs?" "I know they did. Mara has the invoices, the material orders, everything." More rustling. Then, "Adrian, if you're wrong about this..." "I'm not wrong. If you are, you're accusing a major developer of criminal negligence. They'll destroy you. They'll destroy both of you. And if I'm right and we do nothing, people die. I've already lived through that once. I can't do it again." He heard Marcus sigh. Not frustrated, just tired, like he'd known this call was coming eventually and had been dreading it. "I'm in Seattle. I can't get to Denver today. I'm not asking you to come here. I'm asking if you'll look at what I found. If you'll verify my analysis. If it checks out, if you agree there's a problem, then maybe your name carries weight where mine doesn't." "You want me to put my reputation on the line?" "Yeah, I do." Another long silence. Adrian watched Emma through the gas station window. She'd picked out some candy, was counting out coins on the counter with serious concentration. "Send me everything," Marcus said finally. "Scans, photos, whatever you've got. I'll review it. If your math is right, I'll make calls. I still have contacts at the Denver building department." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I haven't done anything." Marcus paused. "Adrian, are you sure you're ready for this? Coming back into this world? It's not going to be easy. People remember Hartwell. They're going to have questions. Let them ask. And you'll be okay with that? With all of it coming back up?" Adrian looked at the phone, then at the truck, then at the mountains behind them. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." "That's either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." Marcus actually laughed at that. "All right, send me the files. I'll call you in a few hours." They hung up. Adrian finished pumping gas, went inside to pay. Mara and Emma were at a table by the window, sharing a bag of chips. "Any luck?" Mara asked. "Maybe. I've got a friend looking at the analysis. If he backs it up, he'll make calls." "How long?" "Few hours." Mara checked her watch. "It's 11:30 now. They're pouring the columns at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We're running out of time." "I know." Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, I'm hungry. Like real food." "Okay, sweetheart, we'll find something." They got back on the road, heading for Denver. Traffic picked up as they hit the interstate. Normal people doing normal things on a Wednesday morning. Going to work, running errands, living lives that didn't involve stopping buildings from collapsing. Adrian's phone rang 40 minutes later. "Adrian, it's Marcus. I've looked at your analysis." Adrian's chest went tight. "And? You're right. The foundation is critically under-designed for the specified loads. With the material substitutions and spacing changes, you're looking at a safety factor of maybe zero point 0.7 where code requires 2.0. This thing is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Can you help? I'm making calls now. But Adrian, you need to understand something. Redfield Development is connected. They've got the mayor's ear, half the city council, most of the building department. Even with my backing, this is going to be a fight. I don't care. We have to try. I know. I'm just telling you to be ready. Marcus paused. There's something else. I did some digging on Redfield. They've done this before. 3 projects in the last 5 years. All of them had material substitutions that weren't caught until after construction. Nothing that caused a failure, but close. They settle lawsuits quietly, pay fines, move on. So they know what they're doing. This isn't an accident. No, it's a business model. Cut corners, save millions, pay the occasional penalty. The math works out in their favor. Adrian felt sick. How do people like this stay in business? Because most of the time, nothing happens. Buildings stand, people live in them, and everyone assumes it's fine. Until it's not. We have to stop them. I'm doing what I can. I've got a call scheduled with the chief building official in an hour. But Adrian, you should be there. You're the one who found this. Your voice matters. They won't listen to me. They might, especially if we both show up. Adrian looked at the road stretching ahead. They were an hour from Denver now, maybe less. Where should I meet you? Marcus gave him an address downtown. City Hall, 3rd floor, 3 p.m. We'll be there, Adrian said. He hung up, told Mara the plan. She nodded slowly. What if they still don't listen? Then we go to the media, the governor's office, OSHA, every regulatory agency we can find. We make enough noise that they can't ignore it. That could take days. We don't have days. Then we get creative. Emma was quiet in the back seat, but Adrian could see her watching in the mirror, taking it all in, learning what it looked like when someone decided to fight. They hit Denver traffic at 1 p.m. The city sprawled around them, steel and glass and concrete, all of it built on someone's calculations, someone's promise that it would stand. Adrian looked at every building they passed and wondered how many of them were hiding the same kind of corner-cutting Redfield had done. How many disasters were just waiting for the right trigger. Mara directed him to a parking garage near City Hall. They had an hour to kill, so Adrian found a cafe where Emma could get a proper lunch and Mara could spread out the documents one more time. Walk me through it again, Mara said. I need to understand enough to explain it if someone asks me directly. So Adrian did. He drew diagrams on napkins, explained load paths and stress distribution, and why concrete strength mattered. Mara listened, asked questions, took notes in the margins of her printouts. Emma colored on the back of one of the napkins, drawing what looked like a building with a giant crack down the middle. Em, what's that? She looked up. The bad building, the one we're fixing. We're trying to stop it from being built wrong in the first place. Same thing. She went back to coloring. At 2:45, they walked to City Hall. The building was old granite and new glass, trying to be 2 things at once and not quite succeeding. Security made them check in, walk through metal detectors. The guard looked at Emma. School field trip? Something like that, Adrian said. 3rd floor, long hallways with fluorescent lights and worn carpet. Offices with names on doors, most of them closed. They found the building department at the end of the hall. Marcus was already there, waiting outside. He looked older than Adrian remembered, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes. But when he saw Adrian, his face broke into something genuine. You look like hell, Marcus said. Yeah, well, mountain living. They shook hands. Marcus looked at Mara, then Emma. You brought your daughter to a building code meeting? Didn't have a choice. Her mom's out of town. Marcus smiled at Emma. You must be Emma. Your dad's told me about you. Emma looked at Adrian. You have? A long time ago, Adrian said quietly. Before everything. The door to the inner office opened. A woman in her 50s, severe suit, reading glasses on a chain, looked at all of them like they were interrupting her day. You're the group about the Titan Center? Yes, Marcus said. Thank you for seeing us, Ms. Patterson. I have 15 minutes. Make it count. They filed into her office. It was smaller than Adrian expected, crammed with file cabinets and blueprints rolled up in corners. Ms. Patterson sat behind her desk, didn't offer them chairs, There were only two anyway. Marcus started. He laid out the technical analysis, speaking in the calm, precise way that made people listen. He showed the calculations, explained the discrepancies between approved plans and actual construction. Ms. Patterson listened, her face giving nothing away. When Marcus finished, she looked at Adrian. "You're the engineer who analyzed this?" "Yes." "And you're Adrian Cole, the Hartwell Pavilion engineer." There it was. The thing he'd known was coming. "Yes." "The investigation said you missed a critical flaw during inspection." "The investigation said the contractor deviated from my specifications and I failed to catch it during inspection." "Both things are true. So why should I trust your analysis now?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma was sitting in one of the chairs, too small for it, watching her father get cross-examined. "Because I've spent 3 years thinking about what I missed," Adrian said. 3 years going over those calculations in my head, understanding exactly where I failed. And I'm telling you, the Titan Center has the same kind of problem. The numbers don't work. The building isn't safe. Ms. Patterson looked at Mara. "And you work for Redfield Development." "I'm an accountant there, yes." "So you've brought me internal documents without authorization. You understand that's likely a violation of your employment contract." "I understand that people's lives are more important than a contract. That's very noble. It's also potentially illegal." Ms. Patterson folded her hands. "Let me be very clear. Redfield Development is a major contributor to this city's economy. They employ hundreds of people. They've built a dozen projects that have revitalized entire neighborhoods. If I halt construction based on allegations from a disgraced engineer and a potentially fired accountant, I better have ironclad proof." "The math is ironclad," Marcus said. "Your math, based on documents that may have been altered or misrepresented." "I have the invoices," Mara said. "Purchase orders, delivery confirmations. All of it proves they're using different materials than specified. Or it proves there were change orders that went through proper channels and you simply don't have access to the full documentation." Adrian felt it slipping away. He'd known this would be hard, but watching it happen was different. "What would it take?" he asked. "What would you need to see to halt the pour?" Ms. Patterson considered. "An independent structural assessment from a licensed engineer with no connection to either party. A full audit of the materials on site. Sworn statements from contractors confirming the deviations. And probably a court order, given Redfield's attorneys will fight any work stoppage." "That would take weeks." "Yes. The pour is tomorrow morning. Then you have a time problem, Mr. Cole." Marcus leaned forward. "Sarah, I've known you for 15 years. You know I wouldn't bring something like this if I wasn't certain." "I know you believe you're certain, but belief isn't evidence." She stood up. "If you want me to act, bring me something that will hold up in court. Until then, my hands are tied." They were being dismissed. Adrian wanted to argue, to push, to make her understand. But Emma was watching, and he knew what desperation looked like. They left the office. In the hallway, Mara looked like she might cry. "That's it? We show her everything, and she just says no?" "She's protecting herself," Marcus said. "If she's wrong, her career is over. Redfield would make sure of it." "So what do we do?" Adrian checked his watch. 3:45 p.m., 16 hours until the pour. "We find another way." They walked back to the parking garage, none of them talking. Emma held Adrian's hand, and he squeezed it, maybe too tight. His phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Adrian." "Mr. Cole, my name is David Brennan. I'm an attorney representing Redfield Development. We've become aware that you and a Ms. Mara Ellis have been making certain allegations about the Titan Center project." Adrian's stomach dropped. "How did you—" "Ms. Patterson is required to report potential issues to the relevant parties, as are we required to protect our interests. I'm calling to inform you that if you continue spreading false information about our project, we will pursue legal action for defamation, tortious interference, and any other remedies available to us." "The information isn't false. Then you won't mind presenting it in court, where it will be thoroughly examined, along with your professional history. I understand the Hartwell Pavilion case is a matter of public record." There it was, the threat wrapped in professional language. "Are you really willing to bet people's lives on your profit margin?" Adrian asked. "Are you really willing to bet what's left of your career on the analysis of someone who's been hiding in the mountains for 3 years? Think carefully, Mr. Cole. We have resources you can't imagine. We will bury you, and Ms. Ellis, and anyone else who gets in our way." The line went dead. Adrian stood there, phone in his hand, while Emma and Mara and Marcus waited. "That was Redfield's attorney," he said. "They're threatening to sue if we don't back off." Mara went pale. "They know. Patterson must have called them immediately." "Of course she did," Marcus said. "She's covering her bases." "So we're done?" Mara's voice cracked. "We just give up because they have better lawyers?" Adrian looked at his daughter, at this woman who'd risked everything to do the right thing, at his friend who'd driven across state lines to help. "No," he said, "we're not done. Adrian, they'll destroy you," Marcus said quietly. "Both of you. You heard the attorney. They have resources." "Then we find a bigger resource." "Like what?" Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts until he found what he was looking for, a name he hadn't thought about in years. Rachel Kwan, investigative reporter for the Denver Chronicle. She'd contacted him after Hartwell, wanted to do a piece about building safety regulations. He'd refused the interview, but she'd given him her number anyway, said if he ever wanted to talk, she'd listen. He made the call. It rang twice. "Rachel Kwan? Ms. Kwan, this is Adrian Cole. We spoke 3 years ago about the Hartwell Pavilion. You said if I ever wanted to talk, Mr. Cole, I remember. What's going on? I've got a story for you. About a building in Denver that's going to collapse. About a developer cutting corners and bribing officials and threatening anyone who tries to stop them. And I've got proof." Silence on the other end. Then, "Where are you?" "Downtown, near City Hall. Stay there. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up. Mara was staring at him. "You're going to the press, unless you have a better idea. Redfield will sue. They'll ruin both of us." "Probably." Adrian looked at her. "But at least we'll be alive to deal with it." Marcus shook his head. "This is crazy. You got a sane option that works in 16 hours? No? Then crazy it is." They waited in the parking garage. Emma sat on the hood of the truck, swinging her legs, asking Adrian questions about how newspapers work and whether reporters really wore those hats like in old movies. Rachel Kwan showed up in 18 minutes, driving a beat-up Subaru with a press credential dangling from the mirror. She was younger than Adrian expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a digital recorder already in her hand. "Show me what you've got," she said. So they did. Right there in the parking garage, spreading documents across the truck's hood, while Rachel listened and recorded and asked questions that cut straight to the bone. She understood it, all of it. The technical details, the financial incentives, the human cost. When they finished, she looked at Adrian. "You know what happens if I run this story, right? Redfield comes after you hard. They'll dig up everything about Hartwell, make you look incompetent or vindictive or both." "I know. And you're okay with that?" Adrian looked at Emma. "I've got a daughter who needs to know her father isn't a coward. That's worth more than my reputation." Rachel smiled. "All right then, let's burn some bridges." Rachel drove them to the Chronicle building, a glass tower on the east side of downtown that looked like it belonged in a better decade. The newsroom on the 5th floor was half empty, most reporters working from home or out chasing stories. The ones who were there looked up when Adrian's group walked in, then went back to their screens like strangers appearing with a billionaire engineer and stolen corporate documents was just another Wednesday. Rachel led them to a conference room with windows overlooking the city. Adrian could see the Titan Center construction site from here, cranes rising like skeletal fingers against the afternoon sky. "I need to verify everything before we publish," Rachel said, spreading the documents across the table. "My editor's going to want independent confirmation. Marcus, you're willing to go on record?" "Yes." "And you understand Redfield will come after you too?" Marcus nodded. "I've been through worse." Rachel looked at Mara. "What about you? You're the whistleblower. They're going to destroy your career in accounting." "I don't care about my career. I care about not having thousands of deaths on my conscience." "Good answer." Rachel pulled out her laptop, started typing. "I'm going to need sworn statements from both of you. Technical breakdown from Adrian. Timeline of when you discovered the discrepancies, Mara. Everything documented." Emma had climbed into one of the rolling chairs, spinning slowly while the adults talked. Adrian watched her, this kid who should be in school doing math problems or whatever 7-year-olds did, not sitting in a newsroom while her father tried to stop a building from killing people. His phone buzzed. Claire. He stepped into the hallway to take it. Hey, Adrian, where's Emma? I've been trying to reach you all day. She's with me. We're in Denver. Denver? You're supposed to be at the cabin. That's what the custody agreement says. Something came up. It's complicated. It's always complicated with you. Claire's voice had that edge it got when she was trying not to yell. I need her back by Friday. I've got that work conference and my mom's flying in to watch her. I know, we'll be back. You better be. I'm not rearranging my life because you decided to go off plan again. Claire, I'm trying to stop a building from collapsing. That's what I'm doing right now. Silence on the other end. Then, what? He explained it. The short version, anyway. The woman who showed up at the cabin, the calculations, the corruption, the race against time. When he finished, Claire was quiet for a long moment. You're serious? Yes. Adrian, you can't... She stopped. You haven't done engineering work in 3 years. You can't just jump back into this. I already did. And what if you're wrong? What if you miss something again? There it was. The question that had been living in his head since the moment he looked at those blueprints. Then I'm wrong. But I checked the math, Claire. I checked it 3 times. Marcus checked it. It's solid. Marcus Chen? You're talking to Marcus again? Yeah. Another pause. He could hear her breathing, working through whatever she was feeling. Emma can't be part of this, she said finally. Whatever you're doing, she needs to stay out of it. I know, I didn't plan. You never plan. Things just happen around you and you react and the rest of us have to deal with the fallout. Her voice cracked. I can't do this again. I can't watch you destroy yourself over something you can't control. This is different. It's always different, until it's not. She took a breath. Just get her home safe. That's all I'm asking. I will. She hung up. Adrian stood in the hallway, phone in his hand, feeling the weight of every mistake he'd made in the last 3 years pressing down on him. Claire was right. He did react to things. He did leave wreckage behind him. But what was the alternative? Walk away from this? Let Mara face Redfield alone? Let the building get built knowing what he knew? He couldn't. Not anymore. Back in the conference room, Rachel had her editor on speakerphone. A man's voice, rough from too many years and too many cigarettes. You're sure about this, Quan? Redfield will sue us into the ground if you're wrong. I'm not wrong, Tom. I've got 2 engineers confirming the analysis. I've got internal documents. I've got a whistleblower willing to testify. And you've got one of those engineers being Adrian Cole, whose last building killed 6 people. Adrian felt everyone's eyes on him. The investigation cleared him of criminal negligence, Rachel said. The contractor was at fault. Public doesn't care about nuance. They hear Adrian Cole and they think Hartwell Pavilion. That's going to undermine the whole story. Or it gives it credibility. Here's a guy who knows what building failure looks like, who spent 3 years living with that guilt. He's not making this up. He's trying to prevent it from happening again. Tom was quiet for a moment. When can you have the story ready? 2 hours? Maybe 3. Make it 2. If we're going to publish this, I want it online before Redfield's lawyers wake up. Print edition goes to press at midnight. This needs to be front page. It will be. And Quan, if this blows up in our faces, you're the one explaining it to the legal department. Understood. The line went dead. Rachel looked at Adrian. You heard the man. We've got 2 hours. Start talking. So he did. He walked her through every calculation, every load path, every reason the foundation would fail. Mara provided the financial documentation, showing exactly how much money Redfield saved by substituting materials. Marcus backed up the technical analysis with his own credentials, his own reputation. Emma fell asleep in one of the chairs, her elephant tucked under her arm. At 6:30, Rachel's fingers stopped flying across the keyboard. Done, she said. I'm sending it to Tom now. They waited. Adrian paced the conference room while Mara chewed her thumbnail and Marcus checked his phone every 30 seconds. Rachel's laptop pinged. He approved it, she said. We're publishing in 10 minutes. That's it? Mara asked. We just put it online and hope people care? I'm also sending it to every news outlet in the state, TV stations, radio, other papers. By morning, this will be everywhere. Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number again. He answered. Mr. Cole, this is David Brennan. I'm calling to inform you that if the Denver Chronicle publishes anything about the Titan Center based on information you provided, Redfield Development will file a lawsuit naming you personally for defamation, tortious interference, and theft of proprietary information. We will seek damages in excess of $50 million. We will also pursue criminal charges against Ms. Ellis for corporate espionage. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand you're scared. We're not scared, Mr. Cole. We're prepared. You have one chance to stop this. Call the Chronicle. Tell them you made a mistake. Retract your statements. If you do that within the next 10 minutes, we'll consider the matter closed. And if I don't, then we destroy you, both of you, and we'll enjoy doing it. Adrian looked at Rachel, at Mara, at his sleeping daughter. Publish the story, he said to Rachel.
Mr. Cole, Brennan started. Adrian hung up. Rachel hit a button on her laptop. It's live. They crowded around the screen. The headline stared back at them in bold type. Developer accused of cutting corners on 42-story tower. Former engineer claims Titan Center Foundation unsafe. Documents reveal material substitutions. Below it, Rachel's article laid out everything. The technical problems, the financial incentives, the city's failure to act. And right there in the third paragraph, Adrian's name and his credentials and his history. Mara's phone started buzzing, then Marcus's, then Adrian's. That's the network, Rachel said, other outlets picking it up. Adrian's phone showed 3 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, voice messages piling up, text messages from people he hadn't talked to in years. One from Claire, "I'm watching the news, what did you do?" He didn't answer, couldn't really. What would he even say? At 7:15, the local TV news led with the story. They showed the construction site, showed file footage of Adrian from 3 years ago leaving the Hartwell investigation, showed Marcus giving an interview via video call from his hotel. By 8 o'clock, it had gone national. Cable news picked it up. Twitter exploded. Someone found old photos of the Hartwell collapse and put them side by side with renderings of the Titan Center. Adrian's phone wouldn't stop ringing. At 8:30, the Denver Building Department issued a statement saying they were reviewing the allegations and would make a determination by morning. At 9, Redfield Development held a press conference. Their CEO, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a suit that cost more than Adrian's truck, stood at a podium and called the allegations baseless, defamatory, and the work of a disgraced engineer seeking attention. Adrian Cole is a man whose negligence resulted in 6 deaths, the CEO said calmly. His attempt to rehabilitate his reputation by attacking a respected company is transparent and pathetic. The Titan Center has been designed and built to the highest standards. Every permit has been obtained. Every inspection has been passed. We will not be intimidated by false accusations. A reporter asked about the documents Mara had provided. We're reviewing all claims, the CEO said. But I can tell you that any allegations of improper material substitutions are false. Our construction methods are fully compliant with all regulations. Another reporter. Will you halt the concrete pour scheduled for tomorrow morning? Absolutely not. This project is on schedule and will remain on schedule. We have hundreds of workers counting on their paychecks and thousands of future residents counting on their homes. We will not let baseless allegations disrupt that. The press conference ended. Adrian watched it on Rachel's laptop, feeling his hands shake. He just called you a liar on national television, Mara said quietly. I know. So what do we do? Adrian looked at the clock. 9:45 p.m., 10 hours until the pour. We go to the site, he said. We show up tomorrow morning with cameras and reporters, and we make it impossible for them to pour that concrete without the whole world watching. They have security, Marcus said. You won't get close. Then we protest outside, we make noise. We force the city to halt the pour while they investigate. Rachel was already typing on her phone. I can get cameras there. I know people at the TV stations. If this turns into a spectacle, they'll cover it. Good. That's what we need. Spectacle. Mara was looking at him like she wasn't sure if he was brave or insane. This is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. We're just making it visible. Emma stirred in her chair, blinking awake. Daddy? Hey, sweetheart. We're almost done here. Are we going home? He wanted to say yes. Wanted to pack her in the truck and drive back to the cabin and pretend none of this was happening. But he thought about Claire's question, what if you're wrong again? And he knew he had to see this through. Not yet, baby. We've got one more thing to do tomorrow morning. The building thing? Yeah, the building thing. She nodded, like this made perfect sense. Okay. They left the Chronicle building at 10 o'clock. Rachel promised to have reporters and cameras at the Titan Center site by 6 a.m. Marcus was going to reach out to other structural engineers, see if anyone else would come forward with concerns. Adrian drove to a cheap hotel near the airport, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and took cash. He got 2 rooms, one for him and Emma, one for Mara. Emma was asleep before her head hit the pillow. Adrian stood at the window looking at the city lights, his phone still buzzing with calls and messages he wasn't answering. A knock on the connecting door. He opened it. Mara stood there in the hotel robe, her hair wet from the shower. Can't sleep either? She asked. Not really. She came in, sat on the edge of the other bed. I've been thinking about what that CEO said, about you being discredited, about this being an attention grab. He's not wrong. That's how people are going to see it. Does that bother you? Adrian thought about it. 3 years ago, it would have destroyed me. Now? I don't know. I just want to stop the poor. Everything else is noise. That's very zen of you. It's very tired of me. There's a difference. Mara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I got fired tonight. Email came through while you were driving, effective immediately. Escorted removal of personal items, legal action pending, the whole thing. I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew it was coming. She looked at her hands. I'm 30 years old. I've got $42,000 in student loans, no job, and I'm about to be sued by $1 billion corporation. My mom called crying. My sister called yelling. My ex-boyfriend called to say I told you so. Sounds like a fun evening. It's been great. She laughed, but it came out broken. Why are we doing this? Really? We could still walk away. Tell Rachel it was a mistake. Redfield would probably settle if we signed NDAs. You want to do that? No, but I want to know why you don't. You've got a daughter to think about, a life, even if it's not the one you had before. Why risk all of it? Adrian looked at Emma sleeping, her face peaceful in the dim light from the window. Because she's watching, he said quietly. And I need her to know that her father isn't someone who walks away when it matters, even if it costs everything, maybe especially then. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. Yeah, well, I put 6 people in the ground because I didn't catch a mistake. That's a lot of pressure too. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, a plane took off, lights blinking against the dark sky. What was it like? Mara asked. After Hartwell, when you knew what happened. Adrian closed his eyes. He'd never talked about this. Not to the therapist, not to Claire, not to anyone. Like drowning, he said. Except you don't die, you just keep drowning. Every day you wake up and remember what you did, and it's drowning all over again. But it wasn't your fault, the contractor. I signed off on the inspections. I walked that site. I should have seen the deviations, should have caught the post-tension errors. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. He opened his eyes. People say it wasn't my fault, but fault doesn't matter when 6 people are dead. Intent doesn't matter. Blame doesn't matter. All that matters is they're gone and I could have stopped it. And now you're trying to stop it from happening again. Now I'm trying not to drown. Mara stood up, moved to the door. For what it's worth, I don't think you're drowning. I think you're swimming. Maybe for the first time in 3 years. She went back to her room, closed the door softly. Adrian sat there for a long time, thinking about swimming and drowning and the difference between them. Eventually, he lay down on the bed next to Emma, not bothering to undress or get under the covers. Sleep didn't come. He watched the numbers on the clock change, counting down the hours. At 5 a.m., he gave up and got in the shower. The water was barely warm, but he stood under it anyway, letting it beat against his shoulders while his mind ran through scenarios. Best case, the city halts the poor pending investigation. The story grows. Regulators step in. The building gets redesigned properly. Worst case, Redfield pours anyway. The story dies. Lawsuits bury him and Mara. The building stands until it doesn't. Most likely case, something in between that he couldn't predict. He got dressed, woke Emma gently. Morning, sweetheart. We've got to get moving. She rubbed her eyes. Is it building day? Yeah, it's building day. They met Mara in the parking lot at 5:30. She looked like she'd slept as much as Adrian had, which was to say not at all. But she'd put on makeup and a professional outfit, armor for whatever was coming. The drive to the Titan Center site took 20 minutes. The sun was just starting to think about rising, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink. They could see the news vans from 2 blocks away. Rachel had come through. There were at least 6 TV trucks parked around the construction site, reporters doing stand-ups with the half-built tower in the background. A crowd had gathered, protesters with signs, curious onlookers, construction workers arriving for their shift and looking confused. Adrian parked as close as he could get. They walked toward the site, Emma holding his hand. A reporter spotted them. "That's Adrian Cole!" Suddenly, they were surrounded. Microphones thrust in his face, cameras rolling, questions shouted over each other. "Mr. Cole, do you stand by your allegations? Are you concerned about being sued? What do you say to people who think you're just trying to rebuild your reputation?" Adrian stopped walking. The crowd pressed in around them. Emma squeezed his hand tighter. He looked at the cameras, at all these people waiting for him to say something. "I'm here because the Titan Center Foundation is unsafe," he said. His voice was steady, which surprised him. "I've reviewed the structural calculations and the material specifications. The concrete being used is 25% weaker than code requires. The rebar spacing is inadequate. If this building is constructed as currently designed, it will fail. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually. And when it fails, people will die." "The developer says you're wrong," a reporter called out. "The developer is lying. I have the documentation. I have the math. And I have the support of other structural engineers who've reviewed my analysis." "Are you doing this to make up for Hartwell?" The question hit him like a fist. Adrian looked at the reporter who'd asked it. Young guy, probably his first big story. "I'm doing this to prevent another Hartwell," Adrian said quietly. "That's all. That's everything." More questions? More cameras? But Adrian pushed through the crowd toward the construction fence. Security guards were gathering on the other side, walkie-talkies crackling. At 6:30, a black SUV pulled up. Redfield's CEO got out, flanked by attorneys. He walked to the fence, facing the protesters and reporters with the kind of calm that came from knowing you had all the power. "This is private property," he announced. "You're all trespassing. I'm asking you to disperse." "We're on public sidewalk," Rachel called out. She'd appeared from somewhere, recording everything on her phone. "Then stay on the sidewalk. But this project is moving forward. The concrete pour will begin at 8 a.m. as scheduled." "Even knowing the foundation is unsafe," Adrian shouted. The CEO looked at him. "Mr. Cole, I understand you're desperate to be relevant again, but making false accusations doesn't change what you are. A failed engineer who couldn't handle the pressure." The crowd went quiet. Adrian felt Emma's hand in his, felt every eye on him, felt the weight of 3 years of guilt and shame and hiding. "You're right," he said. "I failed. I missed something I should have caught, and 6 people died because of it. I live with that every single day. But I'm not wrong about this. And if you pour that concrete knowing what I know, then you're the one who failed, and you'll have to live with what comes next." The CEO smiled. Not friendly, just predatory. "We'll let the courts decide who failed." He turned to the construction manager standing nearby. "Proceed with the pour at 8 a.m. Anyone who interferes will be arrested." He walked back to his SUV. The attorneys followed. Adrian stood at the fence, watching truck after truck of concrete arrive. The mixer drums turning, workers moving into position, everything proceeding like the protests and the reporters, and the accusations didn't exist. At 7:45, police arrived. 6 squad cars, officers forming a line between the protesters and the construction site. "This is getting bad," Mara said. "Maybe we should—" Her phone rang. She answered, listened, her face going pale. "That was my attorney. Redfield filed the lawsuit an hour ago, $50 million in damages. They're also seeking a restraining order to keep us away from the site." "They can't do that," Rachel said. "They're doing it." Mara's hands were shaking. "Adrian, we tried. Maybe we should just—" "No." He looked at the construction site, at the concrete trucks lined up, at the foundation that was about to be committed to failure. "We're not leaving." At 7:55, Marcus called. "Adrian, I've got 12 structural engineers on a conference call. They've all reviewed your analysis. They all agree the foundation is under-designed." His voice was tight with urgency. I'm patching you through to them now. If you can get this on speaker, get it in front of those cameras. Adrian held up his phone, turned it to speaker mode. A chorus of voices came through, engineers from across the country, all of them stating their credentials and their conclusions. The reporters heard it, started recording, started broadcasting live. At exactly 8 a.m., the construction manager gave the signal. The first concrete truck moved into position. Emma was crying. Adrian knelt down, pulled her close. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. You tried, Daddy. You tried really hard. He looked up at the building, at the concrete starting to flow, at the foundation that would doom it. And then his phone rang one more time. The caller ID showed Denver Building Department. He answered. Mr. Cole, this is Sarah Patterson. I've spent the last hour on the phone with the governor's office, the mayor, and our legal team. In light of the overwhelming expert testimony that's come forward this morning, we're issuing an emergency stop work order on the Titan Center effective immediately. Adrian couldn't breathe. You're halting the pour?
Yes. And we're launching a full investigation. If your allegations are substantiated, and at this point it appears they will be, we'll be revoking Redfield's permits until the design is corrected. The concrete truck stopped mid-pour. The construction manager was on his phone, yelling at someone. Workers looked confused, then started backing away from the site. The CEO's SUV door opened. He got out, face red, shouting at his attorneys. Rachel grabbed Adrian's arm. Did you just win? He looked at Emma, at Mara, at all the cameras recording this moment. I think we just stopped a building from killing people. The crowd erupted, protesters cheering, reporters rushing forward, the police holding them back but not bothering to hide their smiles. Adrian's phone wouldn't stop buzzing, messages pouring in, other engineers offering support. Claire calling again. The community college asking what the hell was happening. He ignored all of it. Just held his daughter and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not redemption, that would take longer. Not forgiveness, that might never come. Just the simple knowledge that this time he'd gotten it right. The chaos didn't stop just because they'd won. If anything, it got worse. Within an hour, the construction site looked like a crime scene. City inspectors swarmed the foundation, taking measurements and photographs, while Redfield's attorneys screamed about due process and illegal work stoppages. The concrete that had already been poured sat there like evidence, hardening into proof of what almost happened. Adrian stood behind the police line with Emma and Mara, watching it all unfold. His phone had died from the sheer volume of incoming calls. Mara's was still ringing non-stop. She'd stopped answering after the first dozen death threats. People are saying I should be arrested, she said quietly, scrolling through her messages. That I'm a traitor. That I cost hundreds of people their jobs. You saved thousands of people their lives, Adrian said. Tell that to the construction workers who won't get paid this week. A reporter pushed through the crowd, microphone extended. Mr. Cole, how does it feel to be vindicated? Adrian looked at her. Ask me when the investigation is finished. But you stopped the pour. That's a victory. It's a pause, that's all. Redfield still has lawyers and money and connections. This isn't over. The reporter seemed disappointed by his answer. She probably wanted something more triumphant, more headline-worthy. But Adrian had learned the hard way that nothing was ever truly over until the last appeal was filed and the last lawsuit settled. Marcus appeared from somewhere, looking exhausted. The building department wants a full structural review. They're asking if I can oversee it. Can you? If I cancel everything else for the next month? Yeah. But Adrian, they want you involved too. Your analysis was the foundation for all of this. They need you to walk them through it. Adrian felt Emma tug on his sleeve. Daddy, I'm hungry. He checked his watch. It was almost noon. They'd been standing here for 4 hours. His daughter had missed breakfast, probably was traumatized from watching her father get screamed at by corporate attorneys. And all he'd done was tell her to wait. Parent of the year. We need to get food, he said to Marcus. Can the building department wait a few hours? They've waited 3 years. A few more hours won't kill them. They found a diner 6 blocks away, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the 80s. Emma ordered pancakes. Mara got soup she didn't eat. Adrian just drank coffee and stared at the table. You okay? Mara asked. I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. You did it, though. You actually stopped them. We stopped them. You're the one who found the problem. You're the one who tracked me down in the middle of a blizzard. And you're the one who understood what it meant. Who could prove it? She pushed her soup around with the spoon. What happens now?
Investigation takes a few weeks, maybe a month. If they confirm what we found, Redfield loses their permits. They'll have to redesign the foundation, probably the whole structural system. That's months of work, millions of dollars. And if they don't confirm it? Adrian met her eyes. Then we were wrong, and I just destroyed both our lives for nothing. Emma looked up from her pancakes. But you're not wrong. You checked the math 3 times. I know, sweetheart. Then you didn't destroy anything. You fixed it. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds, Adrian's phone finally died completely. He felt a weird sense of relief being unreachable. No more reporters, no more attorneys, no more people wanting pieces of him he didn't have to give. They finished eating in relative quiet. Mara excused herself to the bathroom and came back with red eyes. You want to talk about it? Adrian asked. Not really. She sat down, wiped her face with a napkin. My mom called. She's upset. Doesn't understand why I had to blow everything up. Says I should have just kept my head down and done my job. That's not fair. She's scared. She came to this country with nothing, built a life by playing it safe, following rules, not making waves. And here's her daughter making the biggest wave possible. Mara laughed, but it was bitter. She asked me who's going to hire me now. What company is going to trust an accountant who leaks internal documents? The kind that values integrity over profit. You know how many of those exist? At least one. Somewhere. Emma had finished her pancakes and was now working on the paper placemat with crayons the waitress had brought. She was drawing the Titan Center, except in her version, it had flowers growing out of the foundation and birds flying around the top. That's pretty, Em, Adrian said. It's what the building should look like. Happy. Buildings can be happy? Sure. If they're built right and nobody gets hurt. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. This kid. His kid. Sitting here drawing happy buildings while the world tried to tear her father apart. Claire called from a payphone at the diner. Adrian borrowed quarters from Mara. Where are you? Claire asked when he answered. Diner in Denver. We just ate. I've been watching the news. They're saying you stopped a major construction project, that you're either a hero or a fraud depending on which channel you watch. Sounds about right. Adrian, this is insane. You know that, right? You can't just... She stopped. Is Emma okay? He looked at his daughter, coloring peacefully. She's fine. Better than fine, actually. This isn't the life I want for her, being dragged to construction sites and press conferences, watching her father get threatened by lawyers. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't plan for any of this. You never do. She sighed. But I saw the interview, the one where you talked about preventing another Hartwell, and I thought, another pause. You sounded like yourself, the old you, before everything. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Just get her home safe, Claire continued, and maybe next time you decide to save the world, do it on your own custody week. She hung up before he could respond. They left the diner at 1:30. Adrian's truck was still parked near the construction site, which now had even more people surrounding it. News helicopters circled overhead. Someone had brought a sound system and was giving speeches about corporate greed. This got bigger, Mara said. Yeah. They pushed through the crowd to the truck. A woman grabbed Adrian's arm. Thank you, she said. Her eyes were wet. My sister works in that building, was going to work there, I mean. Thank you for caring enough to stop it. Adrian nodded, not trusting his voice. More people called out as they passed, some supportive, some angry. One guy spit at their feet and called Adrian a has-been looking for his 15 minutes. Emma stayed close to his side. They made it to the truck. Adrian started the engine, but before he could pull out, a black sedan blocked them in. Sarah Patterson got out, along with 2 other people in official-looking badges. Mr. Cole, I need you to come with us. Adrian's stomach dropped. Am I being arrested? What? No, we need your help. The investigation is moving faster than expected, and we have questions only you can answer. I have my daughter with me. Patterson looked at Emma. We have a break room with vending machines and Wi-Fi. She'll be comfortable. I don't really have a choice, do I? You always have a choice, Mr. Cole, but if you want this investigation to be thorough and accurate, we need you now. Adrian looked at Mara. Can you? I'll stay with her, Mara said. Take her to get ice cream or something. Just text me when you're done. My phone's dead. Then use the city's phone. I'll wait. He got out of the truck, knelt down to Emma's level. I have to go help these people for a little bit. Mara's going to take you for ice cream. That okay? Emma looked at Sarah Patterson and the badges and the official sedan. Are you in trouble? No, baby. They just need me to explain some things. About the math? About the math. She hugged him. Okay, but get me when you're done. Don't forget. I won't forget. He watched Mara drive away in his truck with his daughter and felt the familiar panic of losing control. But he pushed it down and followed Patterson to the sedan. The building department offices were in a squat concrete building that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd given up on beauty entirely. They led Adrian to a conference room where 3 structural engineers and 2 city officials were already waiting. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming, one of the officials said. He was older, 60s maybe, with the kind of face that had seen too many budget meetings. I'm Robert Davison, Deputy Director of Building Safety. These are our consulting engineers. We've been reviewing your analysis and we need to understand your methodology. Adrian spent the next 3 hours walking them through every calculation. They asked questions. He answered. They challenged his assumptions. He defended them. They pulled up building codes and compared his numbers to the requirements. One of the engineers, a woman named Dr. Sarah Okafor, seemed particularly skeptical. The load factors you're using are conservative, she said, perhaps overly so. I'd rather be overly conservative than under-conservative when we're talking about 42 stories and thousands of lives. But if your factors are too conservative, it makes the foundation look more dangerous than it actually is. The foundation is dangerous regardless of which factors I use. The concrete strength is documented. The rebar spacing is documented. Those are facts, not assumptions. Dr. Okafor pulled up a different set of calculations on her laptop. What if we account for the actual loading patterns? Peak occupancy is unlikely across all floors simultaneously. The probabilistic analysis suggests. Probabilistic analysis is great for insurance companies, Adrian interrupted. But I design for worst-case scenarios, because that's when buildings fail. Not during average conditions, during the worst ones. But the cost, I don't care about the cost, I care about whether people die. The room went quiet. Davison cleared his throat. Mr. Cole, we appreciate your passion, but we need to be objective here. Our job is to determine if the building as designed meets code requirements, not if it meets your personal safety standards. Code requirements are minimums. They're the floor, not the ceiling. Any engineer worth their license designs above code. And any engineer worth their license also considers economic feasibility. Adrian stood up. 6 people died in the Hartwell Pavilion because economic feasibility won out over safety. Because a contractor cut corners to save money and I didn't catch it. So forgive me if I'm not interested in finding the cheapest possible way to barely meet code. He walked to the window, trying to calm down. Outside, the city continued its normal operations. People going about their lives, completely unaware that a room full of engineers was deciding whether a building might kill them someday. Dr. Okafor spoke more softly this time. Mr. Cole, I read the Hartwell investigation report. The contractor's deviations were significant. You couldn't have reasonably predicted. I should have caught them during inspection. That's what inspections are for. You're being too hard on yourself. Or maybe I'm being exactly as hard as I need to be. They worked for another 2 hours. By the time they finished, Adrian's head was pounding and his mouth was dry. But they'd gone through every detail of the foundation design, every material specification, every load calculation. Davison closed his laptop. We'll need a few days to compile our findings, but based on what we've reviewed today, I think it's safe to say the stop work order will remain in place, pending a full redesign. So I was right. You were correct that the foundation has significant deficiencies. Whether those deficiencies constitute an immediate danger is something we'll determine in our final report. Adrian wanted to argue, to push, to make them understand that significant deficiencies meant people could die. But he was too tired, and honestly, they'd stop the pour. That was the important part. Can I go now? Yes, but Mr. Cole. Davison stood up, extended his hand. Thank you
for caring enough to fight. We need more engineers like you. Adrian shook his hand, but the words felt hollow. He didn't feel like someone who should be thanked. He felt like someone who'd barely avoided another disaster. They gave him a city phone to call Mara. She answered on the first ring. We're at Glacier Ice Cream on 15th. Emma's on her third scoop. Third? She said her dad was a hero and heroes' daughters get extra ice cream. I didn't have the heart to argue. Adrian smiled despite everything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He walked out of the building into late afternoon sun. The city looked different somehow. Or maybe he was different. He'd spent 3 years hiding from this world, and in less than 48 hours he'd been thrown back into the center of it. The ice cream shop was exactly the kind of place Emma loved. Bright colors, ridiculous flavors, staff that treated kids like royalty. He found them at a corner table. Emma had chocolate on her face and was showing Mara something on a borrowed tablet. Daddy? She ran over, hugging him hard enough to squeeze the air from his lungs. Did you fix the building? I helped them understand what needs to be fixed. The city's going to make sure it's done right. So people won't get hurt? No, sweetheart, people won't get hurt. She went back to her ice cream, satisfied with this answer. Mara looked at him. You okay? You look like hell. Feel like it too. He sat down, suddenly aware of how much his back hurt from the mountain drive and the hours in uncomfortable chairs. They're going to require a full redesign. Could take months. And Redfield? We'll fight it every step of the way, but they'll lose. The evidence is too clear. So we really did it. Yeah, we really did. Mara's phone rang. She looked at the screen, frowned, then answered. Hello? Her face changed as she listened. Yes, this is her. Wait, what? When? She stood up, walking away from the table. Adrian watched her pace near the window, talking rapidly. When she came back, she looked stunned. That was the FBI. What? They want to interview me. About Redfield. Apparently our story triggered an investigation they've been building for 2 years. Wire fraud, bribery, falsifying building permits across 4 states. She sat down heavily. They think this goes way beyond the Titan Center. Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. How much beyond? They wouldn't say, but they asked if I had documentation on any other Redfield projects. Anything about payments to inspectors or city officials. Do you? Maybe. I was just looking at the Titan Center, but I saw some weird transactions on other projects. Didn't think much of it at the time. You need a lawyer. I know, they said I'm not a target, that I'm a witness, but still. She looked scared. This is bigger than I thought. Way bigger. Emma had finished her ice cream and was watching them with worried eyes. Adrian forced a smile. Hey, Em, why don't you pick out a flavor for me? Whatever you think I'd like. She perked up and went to study the display case with serious concentration. What do I do? Mara asked quietly. You tell them the truth. You give them whatever documentation you have. You let them build their case. He paused. And you accept that you might have just brought down an entire company. That's terrifying. Yeah, but it's also the right thing. I'm really tired of the right thing being terrifying. Me too. Emma came back with a cup of something purple. It's lavender honey. The lady said it's sophisticated. Adrian tried it. It was actually pretty good. Thanks, sweetheart. They sat there for a while, eating ice cream while the world continued to shift around them. Adrian's borrowed phone rang. Marcus. Adrian, you need to see this. See what? Turn on the news. Any channel. There was a TV mounted in the corner of the ice cream shop. Adrian asked the staff to change it to a news channel. The headline read, Redfield CEO resigns amid corruption probe. Below it, footage of the silver-haired CEO from this morning, except now he looked smaller, older. His attorneys surrounded him as he walked to a car, ignoring shouted questions. The news anchor was explaining, in a stunning development, Gerald Redfield has resigned as CEO of Redfield Development, citing personal reasons. This comes just hours after the FBI confirmed they are investigating alleged corruption within the company. Sources tell us the investigation has been ongoing for nearly 2 years, but today's revelations about the Titan Center project appear to have accelerated the timeline. Mara was staring at the screen. We did that. No, Adrian said. He did that. By being corrupt. We just turned on the lights. Emma tugged his sleeve. Is that the bad man from this morning? Yeah, baby. Is he going to jail? Maybe. If he did bad things, then maybe yeah. She seemed satisfied with this answer and went back to her tablet. The news continued, more details emerging, other engineers coming forward with concerns about other Redfield projects, city officials distancing themselves, the stock price cratering.
Adrian's phone rang again. This time it was a number he recognized. Professor Cole, this is Dean Morrison from the college. Adrian's heart sank. Here it came, the part where they fired him for bringing too much attention, too much controversy. Dean Morrison. I've been watching the news. Quite a day you've had. Yes, sir. I wanted to let you know that the board had an emergency meeting this afternoon. We discussed your situation.
I understand if you need to let me go. I know this isn't the kind of publicity the college wants. Let you go? Professor Cole, we want to offer you a full-time position with tenure track, starting next semester. Adrian almost dropped the phone. What?
You've reminded people what engineers are supposed to be, what they're supposed to stand for. That's exactly the kind of thing we want to teach our students. The dean paused. The board was unanimous. We'd be honored to have you on faculty full-time, if you're interested. Thank you. I need to think about it. Of course. Take your time. The offer stands. They hung up. Adrian sat there trying to process. 12 hours ago, he was a washed-up engineer hiding in the mountains. Now he had a tenure-track position, and the FBI was using his work to build a corruption case. Good news? Mara asked. The college offered me a full-time job. That's great, right? I think so. I don't know. Everything's moving so fast. Emma came over and climbed into his lap. Can we go home now? I miss the cabin. Yeah, sweetheart, we can go home. They left the ice cream shop as the sun started to set. The city was painted in orange and gold, beautiful in the way cities can be when you're not looking at their structural problems. Adrian drove them back to the hotel. Emma fell asleep in the back seat almost immediately. Mara stared out the window. What are you going to do? Adrian asked. About the job situation? I don't know. The FBI thing means I probably can't work in corporate accounting for a while. Maybe ever. She smiled, but it was sad. 30 years old and starting over from scratch. 32 years old and doing the same thing, Adrian said. If it helps. Does it get easier, starting over? I'll let you know when I figure it out. At the hotel, they said goodnight. Adrian carried Emma to their room, got her into bed without waking her. Then he sat on the edge of the other bed and finally let himself feel the weight of everything that had happened. His phone, the borrowed one, buzzed with a text from Rachel. Front page tomorrow. Your face in the headline, Engineer Saves Denver. Hope you're ready for what comes next. He wasn't ready. Not even close. But he texted back anyway. Thanks for believing the story. Her response came immediately. Thanks for being worth believing in. Adrian set the phone down and looked at Emma sleeping. She had chocolate still on her cheek and her elephant clutched tight. This kid who'd watched her father fall apart and put himself back together in the span of 2 days. Tomorrow they'd drive back to the cabin. He'd have to call Claire, explain everything properly, have to decide about the college job, have to prepare for whatever legal nightmares Redfield was about to throw at him. But tonight, he just sat in a cheap hotel room and let himself believe that maybe, possibly, he'd done something right. For the first time in 3 years, the drowning feeling had stopped. He wasn't sure what to call the feeling that replaced it, but it felt something like swimming. The drive back to this cabin took longer than it should have. Adrian kept the truck under the speed limit, like he could slow down time itself if he just drove carefully enough. Emma was awake now, asking questions about what happened next, and he didn't have good answers for most of them. Will the building be okay now? She asked. Eventually, they'll have to fix it first. And the bad man? He's not going to build anything for a while. Good. She went back to looking out the window at the mountains rising around them. Daddy, are we going back to normal now? Adrian glanced at her in the rearview mirror. What's normal? You know, the cabin and the college and not being on TV. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe there's a new normal now. She thought about this. Is new normal better or worse? I'll tell you when I figure it out. They stopped for gas in Boulder. While the tank filled, Adrian's borrowed phone rang again. He almost didn't answer, but the number looked familiar. It was his attorney, Richard Moss.
They'd worked together on the Hartwell settlement, and Richard had handled the divorce papers. Mostly they talked about mundane things now, tax questions, Emma's college fund. Adrian, I've been trying to reach you for 6 hours. My phone died. What's going on? Redfield's attorneys contacted me. They want to settle. Adrian nearly dropped the phone. Settle what? They haven't even filed the lawsuit yet. They're not going to. The FBI investigation changed everything. They're offering to drop all legal threats against you and Ms. Ellis in exchange for your cooperation with the federal investigation. That's it? No money? No NDA? No admission of wrongdoing? They want you to go away quietly. No more press conferences, no more interviews. You provide your technical analysis to the FBI and then you disappear. Adrian watched the numbers tick upward on the gas pump. And if I say no, then they file the $50 million lawsuit and drag you through court for the next 3 years. Even if you win, the legal fees will bankrupt you. Richard paused. Adrian, take the deal. You already won. The building stopped. The investigation is moving forward. Don't give them an excuse to make your life hell. I need to talk to Mara. She's getting the same offer. Her attorney already called me. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. They want an answer by tomorrow. Adrian hung up and finished pumping gas. Emma had gone into the convenience store for a bathroom break. Through the window, he could see her showing the clerk something on her phone, probably pictures of the protest, knowing her. His borrowed phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Did your lawyer call? What do you think? He texted back. Let's talk when I get to the cabin. Come up if you want. Might be the last quiet we get for a while. Her response? I'll be there tomorrow morning. They got back on the road. The mountains grew taller as they climbed, pine trees pressing in from both sides. Emma fell asleep again somewhere past Netherland, her head against the window. Adrian's mind wouldn't shut off. The settlement offer made sense. It was smart, pragmatic, the kind of thing any reasonable person would take. But something about it sat wrong in his chest. They wanted him to disappear, to provide his evidence and then fade back into obscurity. Maybe that's what he should do. Go back to teaching intro classes and spending his weekends in the cabin. Pretend the last 48 hours never happened, except they did happen. And people knew his name again. And the college had offered him a real position, the kind of job he'd thought was gone forever. The cabin appeared through the trees just as the sun started setting. It looked smaller than he remembered, less like a refuge and more like what it actually was, a place to hide. He carried Emma inside, put her in her bed without waking her. Then he stood in the kitchen, looking at the desk where this whole thing started. The papers were still there, Mara's calculations and his notes scattered across the surface like evidence of a crime. He made coffee from the stale grounds and sat down to think. The borrowed phone rang at 8 p.m. Claire. I saw you're back in the mountains, she said. Cell tower data. Didn't know you were tracking me. I track Emma. You just happened to be with her. A pause. Adrian, we need to talk about what happened. I know, I'm sorry I didn't. I'm not mad. Well, I am mad, but not about what you think. She took a breath. I'm mad because I spent 3 years watching you give up, watching you shrink into this smaller version of yourself, teaching classes you were overqualified for, hiding in the mountains like the world was going to forget what happened if you just stayed quiet long enough. Claire, and then you do this. You risk everything to stop a building from failing. You go on national television and admit your mistakes and fight anyway. And I realized, her voice cracked. That's who I married. That's the man I fell in love with. Not the one who gave up, the one who fought. Adrian didn't know what to say. Emma called me this afternoon, Claire continued. She said you were a hero, that you saved people. And I heard how proud she was, Adrian, how much she looks up to you. And I thought about the last 3 years and how much of her life you've spent being ashamed instead of being present. I know I failed you, both of you. You didn't fail us. You failed yourself. You let one mistake define everything you were. She paused. But maybe you're done with that now. Maybe you're ready to be who you actually are again. I don't know if I know who that is anymore. Then figure it out. Because Emma needs her real father, not the ghost who's been showing up every other week. She hung up before he could respond. Adrian sat in the dark cabin, Claire's words echoing in his head. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, night had fully arrived, bringing stars so bright they looked fake. He thought about the last 3 years. The teaching job he'd taken because it was safe. The cabin he'd bought because it was isolated. The relationships he'd let fade because maintaining them required admitting he still existed. All of it designed to make himself smaller, less visible, less likely to fail again because he'd stopped trying to succeed at anything. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Can't sleep." "Me neither, sweetheart." She climbed into his lap, something she was getting too big for but still did anyway. "Are you sad?" "A little bit." "Because of the building?" "Because of a lot of things." She was quiet for a moment, then, "Mom says you used to build really tall buildings. Before I was born." "I did." "Why did you stop?" Adrian had never explained this to her, not properly. He'd always thought she was too young, that she wouldn't understand. But sitting here in the dark, with his daughter warm against his chest, he realized she deserved the truth. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "A building I designed had a problem, and I didn't catch it. Some people got hurt, and I felt so bad about it that I stopped building things." "But you fixed the new building." "I helped fix it before anyone got hurt, yeah. So maybe you can build things again. But better this time, because you know what to look for." Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. "Maybe," Adrian said. Maybe I can." She yawned. "I think you should. Your buildings are pretty. I saw pictures on your computer once." "You were snooping on my computer?" "I was curious." She grinned up at him. "Are you mad?" "No, baby. I'm not mad." He carried her back to bed, tucked her in with her elephant. She was asleep before he left the room.
Adrian went back to the desk, pulled out his old laptop. It took a minute to boot up. He hadn't used it in months. The desktop was still covered in folders from before, project files, CAD drawings, presentations to clients who no longer existed. He opened one at random. The Helix Tower in Singapore. 68 stories of glass and steel, twisted like a corkscrew. He'd won awards for that design. People had called it revolutionary. He looked at the drawings and remembered what it felt like to create something that would outlast him. To solve problems no one else could solve. To build structures that became part of a city's identity. When had he stopped believing he could do that again? The borrowed phone rang at midnight. Marcus. "You're still awake?" "Can't sleep," Adrian said. "Me neither. I've been thinking about the Titan Center, about what comes next. They're going to redesign it, probably bring in a different firm." "What if they brought you in?" Marcus asked. "What if you redesigned it?" Adrian laughed. "No one's going to hire me to redesign a building I just stopped from being built." "Why not? You understand the problems better than anyone. You've already done half the analysis, and you care about getting it right." "Marcus, I'm serious. My firm could partner with you. We bid on the redesign together. You take the lead on structural. I provide the resources and reputation. We turn this into something good." "That's insane." "Is it? Or is it the most logical solution?" Marcus paused. "Adrian, you've spent 3 years punishing yourself. Maybe it's time to do something different. Maybe it's time to prove you're more than one mistake." "What if I fail again?" "Then you fail. But at least you tried. At least you didn't spend the rest of your life wondering what if." They talked for another hour. By the time Adrian hung up, the idea had started to take shape in his mind. Not just redesigning the Titan Center, but actually coming back to engineering. Really coming back, not just helping with one investigation. It was terrifying. It was also the first thing that had felt right in 3 years. Mara arrived at the cabin at 9 a.m., driving a rental car she'd probably put on a credit card she couldn't afford. She looked tired but determined. "Your attorney called you?" she asked, accepting the coffee Adrian offered. "Yeah, settlement offer. Drop everything, cooperate with the FBI, disappear." "Mine too." She sat at the kitchen table. "I'm going to take it." "Yeah? I don't have a choice. I can't afford a legal battle with Redfield. I don't have your resources, your reputation, your options." She looked at him. "You should take it too. You've got Emma to think about, a teaching job, a life that doesn't involve fighting corporations." "What if I don't want that life anymore?" Mara raised her eyebrows. "What are you talking about?" So he told her about Marcus's offer, about the idea of redesigning the Titan Center, about maybe, possibly, coming back to engineering for real. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she shook her head. That's crazy. I know. You'd be walking back into the exact thing that destroyed you. Or I'd be proving I'm not destroyed, that I learned from what happened and can do better. And if you can't, Adrian looked out the window at the mountains, then at least I tried. At least I didn't spend the rest of my life hiding up here wondering what if. Mara smiled. That's either very brave or very stupid. Someone told me recently those are usually the same thing. Smart person. She had her moments. Emma came out of her room, saw Mara, and ran over for a hug. You came back! I did. Wanted to see how you were doing. I'm good. Daddy says there's a new normal now. Is there? Emma looked at Adrian. I think so. I think it's better. They made breakfast together, pancakes and eggs and bacon that was slightly burned. Emma told Mara about the ice cream shop and the 3 scoops, and how the news lady said her dad was a hero. Are you a hero too? Emma asked Mara. No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who did what needed doing. That sounds like a hero to me. Mara's eyes got wet. She excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, Adrian was doing dishes and Emma was drawing at the table. I'm going to testify, Mara said, for the FBI. Whatever they need, I'll give them. Maybe that counts for something. It counts for everything, Adrian said. And then I don't know. Maybe I go back to school, get a different degree, start completely over. Starting over isn't the worst thing, says the man who hid in the mountains for 3 years. Exactly. I'm an expert on what not to do. She laughed at that. When are you going to tell them? About the redesign idea? Soon. I need to talk to the building department first, and Redfield's receivers, whoever takes over the project once the company implodes. He dried his hands on a towel. Mara, I'm going to turn down the settlement. I'm going to keep talking to the press, keep pushing for changes to building codes, keep being loud about this. They'll sue you. Let them try. The FBI case will tank any lawsuit they file. And honestly, I'm tired of being quiet. I'm tired of making myself small because I'm afraid of failing again. What changed? Adrian looked at Emma, coloring peacefully at the table. My daughter called me a hero, and I realized I'd rather try and fail than never try at all. For her, if nothing else. Mara nodded slowly. Okay, then I'm with you. Whatever comes next, we face it together. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. You went to war for people you've never met. Least I can do is stand next to you while the fallout happens. They shook hands. It felt formal and ridiculous and exactly right. The next 3 weeks were chaos. The FBI investigation exploded into a full-scale probe of Redfield development. 6 city officials were implicated in the bribery scheme. The CEO was indicted on 14 counts of fraud. The company filed for bankruptcy, and receivers were appointed to handle the remaining projects. Adrian testified twice, once for the FBI, once for the city building department's formal review. Marcus flew back to Denver to testify alongside him. Dr. Okafor, the skeptical engineer, ended up agreeing with Adrian's analysis after running her own calculations. The final report confirmed everything. The foundation was critically underdesigned, the material substitutions were unauthorized and dangerous, and the building should not be constructed as designed. Redfield's lawsuit against Adrian and Mara died quietly when the company collapsed. The settlement offer evaporated. They were free. Not because they'd backed down, but because their accusers had imploded. Rachel won a journalism award for her coverage. She interviewed Adrian twice more, long pieces about building safety and engineering ethics and what happens when profit wins over integrity. The college made their offer official. Full-time faculty, tenure track, starting in the fall. Adrian accepted, but with a condition. He wanted to teach a seminar on failure analysis, on what happens when buildings fail and how to prevent it. They agreed immediately. Marcus's firm submitted a proposal to redesign the Titan Center. Adrian was listed as lead structural engineer. The receivers reviewed 12 proposals and chose theirs. You're really doing this, Claire said when he called to tell her. They were talking more now, not about getting back together, that ship had sailed, but about Emma, about the future, about figuring out how to co-parent when both of them were actually present instead of just going through the motions. I'm really doing this, Adrian said. I'm proud of you. I know I don't say that enough, but I am. Thanks, Claire. Just don't mess it up this time. I'll do my best. Emma started second grade in Boulder. She told her class her dad was an engineer who saved a building from falling down. The teacher called Adrian to verify the story. He confirmed it was basically true, though he left out the parts about death threats and corporate corruption. The teacher asked if he'd come speak to the class about engineering. He said yes. Mara got a job with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Not as an agent, but as a forensic accountant helping them untangle complex corporate fraud cases. She was good at it, really good. Turned out years of following money trails for Redfield had taught her exactly the skills the FBI needed. "I'm actually happy," she told Adrian over coffee one afternoon. They'd stayed in touch, meeting every few weeks to compare notes on how their lives had imploded and rebuilt. "Is that allowed? Am I allowed to be happy after everything?" "I think that's exactly when you're supposed to be happy," Adrian said. "When you come out the other side of something terrible and realize you survived." Did you survive? He thought about it. "I'm getting there." The Titan Center redesign took 4 months. Adrian spent 16-hour days running calculations, checking and rechecking everything, bringing in peer reviews from other engineers. He wasn't going to miss anything this time. Couldn't afford to. Marcus flew in twice a month to review progress. They fought sometimes, professional disagreements about load factors and safety margins, but they worked through it. That's what engineers did. They argued about the numbers until the numbers were right. The new foundation design was approved in November. Construction resumed in December, 3 months behind schedule, but built correctly this time. Adrian inspected the site personally every week, walking the foundation before the concrete poured, checking rebar placement, verifying mix designs. The workers recognized him from the news. Some of them thanked him for caring enough to stop the bad design. Some of them resented him for the delay and the jobs lost when Redfield collapsed. He understood both reactions. In January, the Denver Chronicle ran a follow-up story. 1 year after the Titan Center crisis, where were the people involved? Gerald Redfield was awaiting trial, out on bail, his empire destroyed. Sarah Patterson had been cleared of any wrongdoing and was implementing new oversight procedures for construction projects. Mara Ellis was working for the FBI and had helped recover $17 million in fraudulent payments. And Adrian Cole was teaching engineering students about ethics and failure while redesigning the building he'd saved. "Do you think about Hartwell anymore?" Rachel asked during the interview. "Every day," Adrian said honestly. "I don't think that ever stops, but I think about it differently now. Not as the thing that ended my career, but as the thing that taught me what actually matters." Which is getting it right. Not just meeting code or hitting deadlines or making clients happy, actually getting it right so people are safe. That's what you're teaching your students? That's what I'm trying to teach them, along with how to run structural analysis and read building codes and all the technical stuff. But mostly, I want them to understand that our job is to keep people alive. Everything else is secondary. The article ran on the front page. Emma cut it out and put it on the refrigerator in their apartment. Next to her school artwork and a photo of her and Adrian at the Titan Center site, both of them wearing hard hats. In March, the first core columns were poured, properly this time, with the right concrete and the right reinforcement. Adrian was there, watching every truck, checking every pour. Marcus stood next to him, making jokes about how obsessive he'd become. "You're going to give yourself an ulcer," Marcus said. "Probably." "It's going to be fine, Adrian. You designed it right. I designed Hartwell right too, until it wasn't. The contractor screwed up Hartwell. You designed this, you're inspecting it. There's no contractor deviation this time." Adrian knew Marcus was right, but knowing and feeling were different things. He'd probably always have this knot in his stomach when concrete was being poured, this fear that he'd missed something crucial. Maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe that fear was what kept him careful. By April, the foundation was complete. The city inspector signed off. The receivers approved moving forward with the superstructure. The project was officially past the crisis point. Adrian took Emma to see it one evening after school. They stood outside the fence, watching the crane operators preparing for the next phase. "Is it going to be okay now?" Emma asked. "Yeah, sweetheart, it's going to be okay." "Because you fixed it?" "Because a lot of people worked together to fix it. Me and Marcus and the city and all the workers who are building it right." She considered this. "But you started it. You're the one who said something was wrong." "I guess so." "Then you're still a hero." Adrian looked down at his daughter. She was 8 now, taller, smarter, more aware of the world and its complexities. but she still believed her father was someone worth admiring. That counted for something. "I'm just someone who did what needed doing," he said, echoing Mara's words from a year ago. "That's what heroes are," Emma said matter-of-factly. They stood there as the sun set behind the growing building, father and daughter, watching something rise that wouldn't fall. The semester ended in May. Adrian's failure analysis seminar had been popular, 20 students when he'd expected maybe 8. He'd made them read the Hartwell investigation report, made them analyze what went wrong and how it could have been prevented. Some of them asked why he put himself through that, reliving his worst professional moment in front of students. "Because if I can't talk about it honestly, I can't teach you anything worth learning," he'd said. "Failure happens. Mistakes happen. What matters is what you do after, whether you learn from it or let it destroy you." On the last day of class, one of the students raised her hand. "Professor Cole, do you think you're a better engineer now than before Hartwell?" He'd thought about that question a lot over the past year. "No," he said finally. "I don't think I'm better technically. I probably knew more formulas, more code requirements, more design tricks back then. But I'm more careful now, more humble, more aware of what can go wrong. And maybe that makes me better at the job, even if I'm not better at the technical parts." "So failure made you better?" "Failure taught me to respect the stakes. That's not the same as making me better, but it's something." The student nodded, satisfied with this answer. After class, Adrian packed up his office. He wasn't leaving the college, just cleaning out the accumulated debris of a year of teaching, papers and books, and coffee cups that had multiplied when he wasn't looking. His phone rang. Marcus. "We got another project," Marcus said. "Hospital in Fort Collins, 20 stories. They want a seismic redesign. Are you interested?" A year ago, Adrian would have said no. Would have found an excuse, deferred to someone else, retreated to his cabin. Now he pulled up his calendar, checked his schedule. "When do they need the preliminary analysis?" 2 weeks. "I can do that." "Good, because I already told them you were on the team." Adrian smiled. "You're very presumptuous. I prefer confident. See you next week to go over the scope." They hung up. Adrian looked around his office, small, cramped, but his. A place where he taught people how to build things that wouldn't fall down. A place where he got to pass on what he'd learned, both the technical knowledge and the harder lessons about responsibility and ethics and caring enough to get it right. It wasn't the glamorous life he'd had before. No more award ceremonies or international projects or features in architecture magazines. But it was real, and it was his, and for the first time in 3 years, that felt like enough. Emma was waiting for him outside the building, sitting on a bench and reading a book. Their apartment was 2 miles away, an easy walk in the spring weather. "All done?" she asked. "All done. Summer starts now." "Are we going to the cabin?" "Every other week, like always. But I've got work to do too, some on the new hospital project." "Another building to save?" "More like a building to make sure doesn't need saving." They walked together through campus, past students rushing to finals, past professors heading home, past all the normal chaos of academic life. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you happy now?" Adrian thought about it. About the year that had passed since Mara showed up at his cabin. About the Titan Center and the FBI investigation and the teaching job and the redesign work. About all the ways his life had changed and all the ways he'd changed with it. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think I am." "Good. You seem different than before, like you smile more." "I feel different." "Because you stopped being scared?" "No, I'm still scared, but I'm doing things anyway, and that makes all the difference." They walked home as the sun painted the mountains in shades of gold and orange. Somewhere in Denver, the Titan Center was rising properly, built on a foundation that would hold. Somewhere in Washington, Mara was helping dismantle corporate fraud schemes. Somewhere in Seattle, Marcus was planning the next project. And here in Boulder, Adrian Cole, engineer, professor, father, survivor of his own worst mistakes, was walking home with his daughter, ready for whatever came next. Not because he'd stopped failing, he'd probably fail again someday, miss something important, make a mistake that mattered. But he'd learned that failure wasn't the end of the story. It was just part of it. And the part that came after, the getting back up, the trying again, the refusing to let one mistake define everything, that part mattered just as much, maybe more. Emma was talking about summer plans, about wanting to learn to fish, and maybe getting a dog and definitely going camping. Adrian listened, nodding in the right places, his mind half on her words and half on the hospital project waiting for him. The calculations he'd need to run, the seismic loads he'd need to verify, the responsibility of making sure another building would keep people safe. It felt heavy, that responsibility. It always would. But it also felt right, like he was finally doing what he was supposed to be doing. Not hiding from his failures, but learning from them. Not running from the work, but embracing it. Not drowning anymore. Swimming. And that, he thought, as they reached their building and Emma ran ahead to unlock the door, was more than enough. It was everything. The end.